What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Saturday, February 3rd, 2024, and I have an emergency update to share with you guys. So, we have some major breaking news coming in from the Middle East. So, yesterday, the U.S. begun its weeks long campaign against the Iranian proxies. And shortly after their first round of strikes, as part of this weeks long campaign, apparently the Iranian proxies attacked two U.S. bases last night and this morning. Apparently, there were some kabooms reported near the U.S. patrol base in the Conoco oil field in eastern Syria. And also last night, a U.S. base in Erbil, Iraq was targeted. Okay, so this was after the U.S. launched dozens of strikes on the Iranian proxies. Okay, and right now, as of this afternoon, we have U.S. nuclear forces on high alert. You can see here a presidential Doomsday plane up in the air over northern Kansas. It took off from Offutt Air Base, and it is now over northern Kansas. We also have multiple aerial refuelers that were flying in loops over Wisconsin, which is pretty unusual. This means there was probably some kind of Doomsday plane or nuclear warplane that was in this area with its transponder off. And what's interesting is we haven't really been seeing too many nuclear warplanes in the air. And this tells me that they're flying with their transponders off. So our nuclear forces are on high alert. We have Russia calling for an emergency UN Security Council meeting over yesterday's strikes in Iraq and Syria. Russia is saying that the U.S. is sowing chaos and destruction in the Middle East. And Joseph Borrell, the foreign minister of the European Union, said that after the American attacks on Syria and Iraq, the European Union assesses the situation in the Middle East as critical. We appeal to refrain from any actions that would escalate the conflict. Okay, so the EU is assessing the situation in the Middle East as critical, and they are asking people to refrain from any actions that could escalate the conflict. Guys, I told you this would happen back in October. I was warning you that this was going to escalate into a regional war and that eventually this was going to lead to a war with Iran. And we are now very close to that. Okay, we are very close to a war with Iran. There's a lot of prominent politicians here in the U.S. calling for war with Iran to take out their nuclear facilities and demilitarize them. I think it's coming, guys. I think it's going to happen this year before the election. So get prepared. Okay, things are spiraling out of control, and not just in the Middle East, but also in Europe. NATO's doing that massive exercise with 90,000 troops in Eastern Europe, from Finland all the way down to Romania. They have moved 90,000 troops to the eastern part of NATO, right on the border with Russia. They're calling it an exercise, but let's be honest, it's a forward deployment. We have multiple NATO defense ministers telling their citizens to be prepared for a war with Russia very soon. We had leaked documents from the German military saying that they were expecting Russia to invade the Baltics this fall during a transition period between presidents in the U.S. So get prepared, guys. Okay, things are spiraling out of control around the world. And also yesterday, the U.S. had to shoot down 8 drones with F-18s over the Red Sea that were fired by the Houthis. And then they launched strikes on Yemen, taking out 4 Houthi sites where drones were about to launch from. Okay, so the situation with the Houthis is not getting any better. The situation with these proxies is not getting better. This is after we launched dozens of strikes. They're still attacking our bases, they're still attacking our ships. Okay, there's no end in sight. Okay, so let me just read to you some more of the details of the strikes last night. So 85 targets were hit with 125 precision munitions. They targeted 7 areas. The strikes were primarily carried out by 2 US B-1 strategic bombers that flew over the Atlantic from the US and refueled mid-air over Europe. Also, A-10 Warthogs from Davis-Monthan Air Base in Tucson, Arizona were used, as well as Jordanian F-16s. And this was the first time that B-1s were used in the Middle East since 2018, when Trump ordered them to be used against the Assad regime in Syria. The U.S. Navy was not involved in the strikes. Okay, and if you watched my update earlier yesterday afternoon, I put out an update where I played a clip of a B-1 bomber pilot radioing into an air traffic controller, giving the coordinates and telling him that he's on an aerial refueling track. That was the B-1 that ended up, one of the 2 B-1s that ended up carrying out the strikes. Okay, so this is why, I warn you guys about things. It's not to scare people. When I see things happening, I do it out of good faith. I'm trying to help you guys. I'm trying to warn you of what's coming. And apparently 18 members of Iranian proxies were killed in the U.S. airstrikes. Okay, so total count of 18 so far. Command and control, logistics nodes, intelligence hubs, missile sites, drone storage, and ammunition storage were the main targets. Most of the targets seem to have been in eastern and northern Syria and also around Iraq. The British government released a statement saying that London supports Washington's right to respond to attacks on facilities and that the UK remains a permanent ally of the US. And the Iraqi government is upset about the whole situation. They're saying that the US did not give them any prior notice of the strikes, and the Iraqi armed forces have officially condemned the US led airstrikes against the IRGC and Iranian backed groups, stating that it was a violation of Iraqi sovereignty and a threat that will drag Iraq and the region into unforeseen consequences. The Iraqi Foreign Ministry has summoned a U.S. diplomat to Baghdad to present him with a note of protest over the strikes. Okay, so they're summoning one of our diplomats now, and they're not happy about this. And Iran has placed all of their armed forces on the highest level of alert, and they've activated surface to air missile systems along their border with Iraq, including ballistic missiles. Okay, so they're getting ready to strike at U.S. bases. If we target them in Iran, they're going to respond with ballistic missile strikes on our bases, guys. They have all of their ballistic missiles positioned on the border with Iraq, and they're basically in the launch position now. Okay, let me read to you this official statement from U.S. Central Command. So these strikes took place at 4 p.m. yesterday. At 4 p.m. Eastern Time, February 2nd, U.S. CENTCOM forces conducted airstrikes in Iraq and Syria against Iran's IRGC Quds Force and affiliated militia groups. U.S. military forces struck more than 85 targets with numerous aircraft, to include long-range bombers flown from the United States. The airstrikes employed more than 125 precision munitions. The facilities that were struck include command and control operations, intelligence centers, rockets and missiles, and unmanned aerial vehicle storages, and logistics and munitions supply chain facilities of militia groups and their IRGC sponsors who facilitated attacks against U.S. and coalition forces. So we're seeing history unfold here, guys. This is historic. We are now over the Rubicon. Okay, we have crossed the Rubicon. There is no turning back. We're not going to be able to reverse things. We're only going to escalate from here on out. Okay, so get prepared. Let me read to you what Biden tweeted yesterday at 5:45 p.m. Eastern Time. Today, at my direction, U.S. military forces struck targets in Iraq and Syria that the IRGC and affiliated militia used to attack U.S. forces. We do not seek conflict in the Middle East or anywhere else in the world, but to all those who seek to do us harm, we will respond. Okay, so that's Biden's tweet. Here we have a press release from the Defense Department, official statement from Lloyd Austin, the Defense Secretary. And this update was sponsored by My Patriot Supply. Guys, My Patriot Supply has brought back their 25% discount on their 3-month emergency food supply. And to get the deal, you have to go to preparewithnyprepper.com, and the link is in the description below this video. And this 3-month emergency food supply has a 25-year shelf life and includes over 2,000 calories per day. All of this food is stored within 6 rugged, water-resistant buckets, and free shipping is included. And My Patriot Supply is also doing a 30% discount on the Vesta self-powered indoor space heater and stove. With this thing, you can safely heat and cook indoors. You don't have to worry about carbon monoxide poisoning. You don't have to worry about burning your house down. It uses special canned heat, and it comes with 24 cans. Each can will last you 6 hours and can warm up a room of 200 square feet. So to get the deal, also go to preparewithnyprepper.com. And also, My Patriot Supply has a general store where they sell all kinds of prepping and survival items. To get to that store, you just click on the My Patriot Supply logo at the top of the page, and it'll take you to their general store. And they have all different kinds of discounts here on various items. They have MREs, they have water filters, they have potassium iodides, fire starters, anything you can imagine. So use the link preparewithnyprepper.com to get 25% off of the My Patriot Supply 3-month emergency food supply and 30% off of the Vesta indoor space heater and stove. Following the attack on U.S. and coalition forces in northeastern Jordan this past Sunday that killed 3 U.S. service members, at President Biden's direction, U.S. military forces today conducted strikes on 7 facilities, which included more than 85 targets in Iraq and Syria that the IRGC and affiliated militias used to attack U.S. forces. This is the start of our response. The president has directed additional actions to hold the IRGC and affiliated militias accountable for their attacks on U.S. and coalition forces. These will unfold at times and places of our choosing. We do not seek conflict in the Middle East or anywhere else, but the president and I will not tolerate attacks on American forces. We will take all necessary actions to defend the United States, our forces, and our interests. Okay, so they also mentioned defending their interests. Okay, and this is the start of our response. Okay, so apparently 2 U.S. officials said that this was just the beginning. Okay, this was just the beginning. This is not the end. And if you remember, John Kirby said like 2 days ago that the first thing you see is not going to be the last thing you see. Okay, so there's going to be more potentially today, potentially tomorrow. I don't know how they have this whole plan set up. It could be that they're doing it in stages, in the sense that, they're going to use like a use of force continuum where, they escalate, then we escalate back. And then if they escalate more, then we escalate more, and so on and so forth, until they stop doing what they're doing, until they stop attacking our bases, until they stop attacking our ships. But the problem is we're dealing with jihadists here. Okay, they're not going to stop. Okay, they just have to be wiped out. That's the only way to stop them. Okay, they're not going to stop attacking us. Unfortunately, that's just the way that their mentality is. Okay, they believe that they're going to go to heaven and have 70 virgins in heaven if they get martyred, if they get killed in battle against America and Israel. Okay, here we have a tweet from John Bolton. He was Trump's national security advisor. He said Biden's failure to establish any degree of deterrence against Iran culminated in today's actions. Killing Americans is a red line that should be answered with strikes directly at Iran, not proxies. They need to know the seriousness of our objection to their belligerence. Please turn your thoughts towards Americans in harm's way and pray for their safe return and success. So he's saying that we have to strike Iran directly, okay? And the Houthis may have hit another commercial ship yesterday, according to the British Maritime Trade Organization. Apparently, a Liberian flagged vessel stopped responding after reporting 2 kabooms near the ship. And the French container shipping giant CMA CGM has suspended the passage of its ships through the Red Sea due to security risks and Yemen Houthi attacks. And several people were injured Saturday in a knife attack at Paris's Gare de Lyon rail station, a major travel hub. So this could be potentially a sleeper cell that was activated. Okay, that's one of my biggest concerns. And remember back in December, the FBI, DHS, they said that depending on how things go in the Middle East, the chances of attacks here in the US are going to increase as things escalate. Okay, they said that the chance of a big attack here in the US is higher than before 9/11. Okay, so we could see some kind of massive event here on our soil. Okay, there's thousands of jihadists and sleeper cells here in the US. A lot of them are getting through the southern border. Okay, so if you're going out to a big city, make sure you're aware of your surroundings, have a bug out bag, have some kind of self defense tool. Okay, avoid crowded areas, always know where the exits are, always look for cover and concealment, and be able to identify cover and concealment and move to that as quickly as possible if something weird starts happening. Okay, because when crazy things happen, you only have split seconds to respond, and your decision will literally mean the difference between life and death. So just be aware that you have to make decisions fast. You have to be aware of your surroundings at all times if you go into busy areas, crowded areas. Okay, and Ukraine launched drones last night at the largest oil refinery in southern Russia, the Lukoil refinery in Volgograd, also known as Stalingrad. There was a massive fire, and what's interesting is that Volgograd celebrated the 81st anniversary of the victory at the Battle of Stalingrad. Okay, so Ukraine launched drones at the largest oil refinery in southern Russia in the city where Stalingrad took place. Okay. And on the same day that the Russians defeated the Nazis in Stalingrad. Okay. So obviously, Ukraine was trying to send a message to Russia. Ukraine is starting to hit Russia deep behind the front lines now. Okay. Stalingrad is really far from the Ukrainian border. They hit refinery in St. Petersburg a few weeks ago. Okay, so Ukraine is really advancing their drone capabilities. They hit the airfield in Crimea the other day. They took out several aircraft. They also sunk another Russian warship this week, the Ivanovets. So Ukraine is really taking the fight to Russia. And Putin said yesterday during a working visit to the Tula region that Russia has modernized their strategic nuclear forces by as much as 95% and their naval component by 100%. And Romania's government has reached an agreement with Romanian farmers and truckers to end a weeks-long protest against the import of products from Ukraine and other non-EU countries. And Ukraine is reporting that they damaged at least 3 Russian military aircraft at the Belbek military airfield near Sevastopol in Crimea. Ukrainian Air Force spokesperson Yuri Ikhnat confirmed on February 2nd, yesterday, that Ukraine attacked the airfield on January 31st using Scalp and Storm Shadow long-range cruise missiles, a military source told the Ukrainska Pravda. And Yuri Ikhnat confirmed that the attack damaged aircraft but also resulted in casualties among Russian military personnel. And this came just a few days after they took out or sunk the Ivanovets warship in the Black Sea. So Ukraine is using Western missiles to target Russian bases, guys. Okay, this is how escalation happens. And North Korea says that they tested cruise missiles with quote unquote huge warheads. Okay. They tested more cruise missiles this week. I think like 4 days in a row, they were testing cruise missiles. Now they're saying that they had huge warheads. And last night there was a massive earthquake right outside of Oklahoma City. It was initially reported as a 5.5 magnitude earthquake, and it was downgraded to 5.1. And what's interesting is that just 3 weeks ago, on January 13th, there was a 4.7 in the same area. Want to remind you guys that the Oklahoma state record for an earthquake is 5.8. So this was near the Oklahoma state record. And apparently, shaking was felt all the way up into Kansas and northwest Arkansas, even parts of Missouri. Okay, so it looks like the New Madrid fault line is waking up. If you don't know what the New Madrid fault line is, you better read about it, because there's a good chance that we will get a quake in our lifetime from the New Madrid fault line. And the last time there was a big quake there, it caused the Mississippi River to flow in the opposite direction, okay, that it normally flows. All right. Want to just show you guys some flight paths from last night. We had a Russian Air Force plane flying over Homs, Syria. This is really interesting. We also had U.S. battle damage assessment going on in Iraq. We had this U.S. State Department plane doing loops over central Iraq in this one particular area. Very strange, and it was flying low. We also had multiple C-17s and C-5s going from Germany and the UK down into the Middle East. So obviously moving ammunition and supplies down into the Middle East from NATO. And we have some sad news. Carl Weathers passed away yesterday at the age of 76. You may remember him from Predator and Rocky. He played Apollo Creed in the Rocky movies with Sylvester Stallone. So rest in peace, Carl Weathers. I was a huge fan of Carl Weathers as a kid. He was one of my heroes, okay, along with all the other big action stars of the era. So that's pretty much it, guys. I'll be back later on this evening with more breaking news. So make sure you're subscribed. Hit the bell icon down below so you get notified when I post these updates. And until then, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere.